Oh, here's Zeb, guys.
Zeb.
Oh, it's a cat. Oh, it's Zeb.
Hello.
Hey, Zeb.
How's it going?
How you doing?
What's happening, man?
How do I sound?
Sound good?
Good. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great.
Vinnie and Jeremy don't sound so good, but that's okay. I'll get used to it.
Get off of me.
Well, Zeb, I want to thank you for...
who do we got here? Jeremy, Vinnie, and Mike. Okay.
There you go.
That's right. I'm Mike. I'm the one who's been annoying you and told you that you saw you across from Lou Ferrigno at the MegaCon.
Always a great place to be.
I have right here. I put it on social media today.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Of course, I come years later. I realized that I had the season 1 DVD because I started getting digitally after that, and I'm like, wait, did you work on season 1?
No, absolutely not.
No, but hey, it's one of my cherished possessions. I have it. You and Matt signed it, so
I signed it without compunction. I just signed.
You guys are so awesome that day. Like I told you, I walked in, didn't expect to see you guys sitting there. You guys were just sitting there chatting to each other, you and Matt, and I'm like, and I just popped up, and you guys couldn't have been nicer and more awesome. And so, I really thank you for coming on the podcast. I just randomly reached out to you, and you were nice enough to say, "Hey, man, let's do it."
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
No, so I've been catching up on Supermansion recently. I was a latecomer to it. I've been a Robot Chicken fan for years, but Supermansion I caught a few months ago probably. Where can I find season 3, man?
That is a great question. I don't know. I think in Canada it just started airing. You can stream it in Canada and maybe Australia has it, but Chicken Soup for the Soul bought Crackle, and I think they looked at Supermansion and they said, well, this isn't necessary for our plans to become profitable. And so that's that. And it's a bummer because I think I was just really proud of season 3 because it felt like, you start getting your reps in. Right. Every department just starts getting more and more proficient at what they're doing, getting more creative. And I really felt like we were humming on season 3. We knew the characters better. So yeah, I hope someday you'll be able to find it without a VPN.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Hey, a quick trip to Canada couldn't hurt either,
No.
They're not letting you in.
Oh, yeah, probably not.
Oh, that's
probably
right.
Not.
No.
Yeah.
They're taking this seriously.
At this point, there's no plans for season 4 or anything like that.
No. As I said, Chicken Soup for the Soul was not interested, and then nor was the rest of Hollywood. So we shopped it around for a little bit, but I think everyone was like, "Oh, a show that was canceled from Crackle. Where do we sign?"
You're right.
How much do you want?
How can we pass this up?
Yeah. Which again, it sucks because I think we assembled such a fun cast. It was so much fun working with everybody. And I really wanted to do another season, but that's how it goes. We got to do 46 episodes. There's nothing to complain about there.
No,
definitely. And how did the series come to fruition? Was that a idea you and Matt came up with? I know Bryan Cranston's one of the EPs. Was that after he came on as an actor? Did he join as an EP? How did it all come about?
Well, we had started working with Lucasfilm on a show called Detours, which George Lucas liked the Star Wars special that Robot Chicken had done, and then we did a couple more of those. And I think he wanted to do something like that or have fun with the brand before, and have it all his own. And so we were working on that, which is really fun. And Matt just noticed that, Matt really liked my scripts that were more longer form. Robot Chicken, of course, are like, some of those sketches are 10 seconds long. The longest one is probably 3 minutes. So just one day I walked into the office and he said, you need to create a TV show. And I said, okay, I guess I like comic books. And so, and I think like when we started, like Titanium Rex was even based sort of off the Emperor character that we had in Detours. We were like, oh, I like writing the Emperor. I'll make someone like that, you know? And then eventually it becomes its own thing. And, you know, the development process, things change, you know, from when you started. And so by the time it got onto the air, it had become its own thing. And then by the end of its first season, it starts becoming a slightly different thing. And then by the end of the second season, it had kind of figured out what it was. And then we hit the ground running on the third.
All right. I'm still, I mean, I had no idea you played the Groaner. I that was zero idea. Like I hear it in my head and I can't picture you. Like Jubot, yeah, or Robobot, whatever he's going by now.
that was another thing. We were trying to shop reruns of the show, you know, to another streaming platform, which would be fun just so people could see it. And I think a lot of people look at it and they're like, this content is a little too whatever for this day and age. It just, you know, things change so quickly. You know, and I do think the show, you know, it was developed for Adult Swim, so it tried to be edgy, but I do think like underneath it, it had a good heart. Like, I don't think it was ever trying to hurt anyone's feelings or we weren't trying to be edgelords, but I just think, you know, like we have a character named Jubot for the first season. That was Matt's idea. I want to make that perfectly clear. And you know, even that tried to be respectful, but yeah, it got a little edgy. But you know, it's easy to get cast on these shows doing voiceover work when you created the show, and so that's how I booked those two roles.
That's awesome.
That's good. It's always good to know the guy who made the show. That's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I did see a difference between season 1 and season 2, and I wanted to see if that was like a note that was brought to you by the studio. There was a lot more penis in season 1 than season 2. What was there something like it was Cracker like, hey guys, maybe we're just gonna pixelate a lot now, or maybe just don't show so much dong? Or
No, that's funny because in season 1, I always assumed the penises would be pixelated. You know, like I think
mine is.
Yeah. I wish I could pixelate it in real life. You know, it's like I think the idea of a naked man is always funnier than the actual sight.
Absolutely.
You know, so actually that was when I went into the second season, I started noticing that they were taking the pixelation off because we'd give them a completely uncensored one and a censored version. And I started saying, hey, can we, even in the uncensored, we got to deliver the pixelated version. It's not meant to be full frontal nudity, just because I think it's like takes you out of it. You know, it's a little shocking when the pixelation gives you plenty of an idea.
Yeah.
So that was all just us learning things as we went along, figuring it out as we went.
Okay.
That's hilarious.
Only way to get it into Japan.
and the animators always, I think because you just very rarely get to animate a penis, they would always go so hard on the penis. Like they would be lovingly animating every jiggle, every sway. It was just too much. So not only were there penises, but you could just see everything.
Oh man!
Did you use a lot of the same guys from Robot Chicken on Supermansion? A lot of the same animators?
Yeah. It was all in the same studio, so there was a lot of overlap. You know, I think there were a few times where we were overlapped with Robot Chicken shoot. So then there's a lot of horse trading. You know, like we want her for a couple of weeks. No, I want her. And me and Tom Shepard, who wrote on Supermansion, I kept forcing him to write on it, even when he was directing Robot Chicken. He was always so pissed. But we had a few blow-ups a few times because it's always so stressful, you know, when he's trying to get animators, I'm trying to get animators. Everyone's trying to make the best show possible.
All right.
How many people were in the writing room on something like that?
So there were about, I'd say 5 or 6 of us, and
Okay.
the writer's room is really valuable. Like almost every idea or episode idea for the show was created by the writer's room. You know, like they just churn ideas and they're just throwing ideas at you the whole time. And then yeah, everyone goes off and writes their script, and then I would sometimes take another pass at it to try to bring it into the voice of the show. It's like really hard to like write in someone else's voice.
Yeah.
And Tom Shepard, who again was the Robot Chicken director, he was the one writer that I felt comfortable with, like being in the same room as I was actually typing. You know, like that's a very specific relationship you have to develop. It's kind of hard if you're not vibing to sit in there, because you know writing sucks, man. It's hard. Most of the time you're just fighting your own insecurities. But me and him, we worked really well together. You know, I could write something. If I got stuck, we'd work it out really quickly. If he was laughing, I knew it was time we could move on. So he really helped me crank out scripts.
And that seems to be, I mean, you seem to be the go-to guy for superhero stuff. You kind of touched on that before. Like whenever there was the DC specials for Robot Chicken, or even, you know, Star Wars, you seem to be brought in for the big specials. Because the last regular episode you worked on, it's been a few years, right? Regular season writing and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it was, you know, because I directed season 6 and 7. And when I was directing, I would be in the writer's room for like the first 5 episodes before the directing stuff took me out of there. So it was probably a season 7 episode.
Okay. I mean, I've read that you got your start at Marvel like right out of college. So like, how did that happen? Did you go to school for writing?
No, I went to school for, I read Jurassic Park like right before I went to college. And so I started in molecular biology. And then at the end of that year, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm not going to be a scientist. I don't understand any of this. And so they have an 8mm film class. So I started taking film.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so by the time I was about to graduate, I knew just enough, you know, like they had just come out with some really fun computer editing programs. They called them nonlinear editing back then.
Right,
I think
right.
Media 100, which, you know, when we were kids, we'd make movies and if you wanted to add sound or something, we would like play it back on the VCR and shoot off the actual television and like add sound, just degrading the image into nothing.
Right.
So that was awesome when that stuff came around. And so me and my friends would make dumb videos, and that's when Wizard started having that direct-to-video contest, which I'm sure you all remember from 20 years ago from that canceled magazine. But I had a friend that looked like the Incredible Hulk, so we painted him green and made a video about the Incredible Hulk losing his job at Marvel. So he like had to be a caddy, but the golfer yelled at him, so I played the golfer and he just beats the shit out of me. And you know, we didn't have like a stunt coordinator, so it was always just like, oh, just beat the shit out of me, man. Just rip my clothes off. It'll be hilarious.
I'd like to see that now. Please make something like that now. That would be awesome.
And so we ended up winning that contest 2 years in a row. And when you won, you got to go to Wizard World Chicago. They'd give you like a Wizard Award, and all the industry guys were there. So, you know, I gave up and gave like a funny speech because I was such a nerd. I was making like little in-jokes. And the next morning, I heard Axel Alonso was looking for me. And I knew he was an editor that Joe Quesada had just hired. And I was like, oh, shit. Oh, shit. Yeah. And sure enough, I found him. And he asked if I wanted to write a Spider-Man comic. And because there was that Tangled Web of Spider-Man where they were doing like offshoots of the Spider-Man universe where they could do a little more interesting one-shots. And so I started doing that. And that was my first in. It was crazy.
Wow.
It was huge.
That's a great story.
Did you meet Matt through Wizard or when you guys were at Marvel together?
No. So he started at Marvel. And then he was the guy that was running those contests. That's how we met.
Okay.
So he was the one that called me to tell me he won. to tell me I won. And you know, that was a big deal for me because when you grow up in Colorado, you just don't know how. I didn't have any idea how I was going to get into any industry. I had no idea how it worked. In Colorado, there are like 3 internships. You know, you could go work at Warren Miller, which I did, and they make ski videos. You know, they make ski movies every year.
Right.
So it was just like I had no idea how to get into anything. So to get that break, even though it was just like winning a contest, you know, it felt really good. It felt like I was on my way.
Yeah. Well, at that point, you know, you figure you have no fear at that point. It's like, what have I got to lose? You know, so why not? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So. Hulk beat the shit out of me. Tear my clothes off. Let's do this.
That is awesome. I got people I work with. When I tell them that story, they're gonna laugh their asses off.
Have you always been a Marvel guy? Because I know now you're working on Hellions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty exciting. But I mean, it seems like you've had a really long Marvel run, and you had that exclusive run in the mid 2000s, I guess. I don't know. Are you still on that kick? Still exclusive or
no? Okay. But you know, don't tell them, but I'm not going to work for anyone else. Like, I'm such a Marvel guy. I got into comics. There were some college kids living underneath the house we were renting when I was a kid, and one of them just left me like a cardboard box full of comics when he moved out. And there were DC comics and Marvel comics in there, and it's weird. I just couldn't make heads or tails out of the DC comics. I don't know. You know, it was like issue 700. What? No, what?
Yeah, right.
700. Like, didn't even make sense to my brain. Like, where does this story start? Where does it end? But
right.
But you know, there was a reprint of the first Spider-Man annual with the Sinister Six. You know, and that just completely sucked me in. I was hooked on Marvel from then on out. It just seemed easier to wrap my head around when I was a kid. And then when we moved, I started, you know, I got back into it. I can't remember how old I was, probably not much older than 10, around when Kraven's Last Hunt was coming out. And that kind of blew my mind. And then I got into the Punisher. I had a big Punisher phase. And yeah, it was just always Marvel.
Were there any particular writers that you latched onto that you gravitated toward their work, or was it more the character based?
I think it was the characters at first. Yeah, and I don't remember when you start realizing, oh, this writer is good. You know what? I think the first writer I really knew I loved was Peter David. I got really into that Incredible Hulk run, the Gray Hulk. And that was the first one that that I kind of, you know, I started reading around 350, and I knew I wanted to go back to 315 because that was or 314 because that was the first appearance of the Gray Hulk. And so that was the first one that I started going to the comic store, mowing lawns, putting that collection together. That was awesome because you got to go through the Todd McFarlane issues. You got to chew through the Al Milgrom issues. They were that was really cool. And then, you know, you get older and you start, you know, you hear about Dark Knight Returns, and then you read the Daredevil Frank Miller stuff, and you just know that this is much better than anything you've read before. And you start getting into the writers, you know, the Alan Moores and the Frank Millers.
All right. I have some user submitted questions. First one is, have you ever dressed up as a superhero?
Well, unfortunately, the second year we did the Wizard World, we had to go harder than the Incredible Hulk that just had the one hero. So we did the Real World Metropolis, which had the Hulk. We had a Supergirl, a North Star, Namor the Submariner, and then I was Thor. I was about 50 pounds lighter than I am now. Like literally 50 pounds lighter than I am now. And so what we revealed at the end of the video was that Thor had a drug problem, and that he had lost a lot of weight. And so we did that scene where they find the needles in his bedroom, and he collapses in tears.
Oh my god!
Yeah. So yes, I dressed up as Thor.
Yeah, I can see you as a meth Thor.
Yeah, it was a meth. It was
definitely,
a meth Thor.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's a high compliment right there. I can see you as a meth Thor.
Yeah. I'll take it.
All right. Got another one. Have you ever been slapped across the face 3 times in a row?
What?
These are real troll questions.
Yeah,
I think somebody must have seen the video of George Lucas beating the shit out of me, because when we were working on that Detours show, I think they wanted to shoot some behind the scenes footage or do like a skit for an Easter egg for a DVD for like with the Star Wars Robot Chicken DVD. And so I had this whole thing with George that I wanted him to kick me out of the room when I brought up Mara Jade, because he was always talking about how much he hated Mara Jade and can't believe someone created her. I always liked Mara Jade. So yeah, I choreographed that whole thing. The first take, I think I don't know what I was doing, but they didn't do it exactly how I wanted them to. So I over directed everyone. And I think some of that frustration might have come out, because this time, as he was kicking me out, I tried to give him some sass, and he just started freaking windmilling on me, just slapping the shit out of me.
Did you say something bad about the prequels? Is that what happened?
No, I can't. I think in the sketch I kept bringing up Mara Jade.
Yeah, I know. Just busting your balls. I mean, speaking of that, I mean, do you think that's ever going to see the light of day, Star Wars Detours? I mean, it seems to like always pop back up in the conversation and kind of fade away. I don't know, rights wise, I don't know if that's a thing, but
yeah, I don't. I know. I'd assume they have the rights, but they are certainly in no hurry to release it. And you'd think with Disney Plus, where everyone's trying to get content, you'd think if they were going to release it, they'd release it now. So it might never see the light of day.
Right. I know you acted a little bit on Titan Maximum, and I saw you talk about it at MegaCon. This is 9 years ago, and Titan Maximum's in the past, obviously, I think. But were you a writer on that as well, or how did you? Yeah. I know that's the same guys that did. It's Matt and did Tom Root, I think.
Tom Root, yeah,
okay.
Tom Root is the co-head writer on Robot Chicken. Hilarious, probably the funniest writer I've ever worked with. And so, yeah, I did write on that, but it was the same thing. Like, I helped him break the stories. And then I like, that was the first time I was writing like a longer 22-minute story. So I got rewritten a lot by Mr. Root, as I should have, but I learned a lot. It was fun. It was fun watching him work and seeing a show get built from the ground up.
He insists you call him that?
Mr. Root? Yes.
Yeah.
Adamant.
He was Brad in Supermansion, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't see. So I didn't see season 3, obviously, so I don't know if there's a spoiler. But is Brad definitely dead, or?
He is definitely dead. I
come on, Mike.
I kept thinking of bringing him back, but then I would watch his death, and I kind of really liked his death, and so I didn't want to bring him back unless it was going to be even cooler than that death, and I could never quite get there. But we were always thinking that we might go to Subtopia, which is where Rex was from, and they might find, because Brad was last seen drilling down into the Earth's core, so we might find him there as like a Subtopian slave that they would have to free. But it just never seemed to work out.
Gotcha. Another user submitted question: have you ever hung out with Jonathan Frakes? Matt's submitting all these to my cousin who we went to high school.
I did hang out with Jonathan Frakes. It was an unfortunate night in Florida. We were at a convention, and we did that stupid thing where you go to Epcot Center and you try to have a drink in every country of
Drink
Epcot
around the world.
Center around the world. And
That's
my
right.
God, were we ripped up by the time we got home. And so we were hanging out with Frakes, and in the cloud of my mind, I just remember trying to be super charming and making jokes with Frakes, and him looking at me like he was an inch away from knocking me out cold. So I did not do a great job that night, but he was playing a shuffleboard with Jeff Johns all night. They had a good rapport. Jeff could handle his liquor a little better than I did.
Were you constantly all night? Were you like, "You're number one, man. You're number one"?
It was that level.
Oh my God.
It was that level.
I always end up waking up in Germany when I end up doing that.
Going
in
around
Epcot.
the world.
Yeah.
Not recommended.
No.
Yeah, Matt only sent those 3 questions. My cousins went to high school with him, and so I was having them bug him for some embarrassing stories or something.
Nice.
Like that.
Nice.
I'll get him back.
Good
Get him
stuff.
back. That same night, I was completely trashed, and I saw Lou Ferrigno sitting at the bar. I think I was like, I'm gonna go get a picture, and so I go over there, and I was like, Lou, and he just looked at me and went, no. I went back to his thing. I just hung my head and walked away because I got it. I understood why you said that.
That's
awesome.
great. That's awesome.
That is great.
Big Lou.
Big Lou.
Love him.
Are you involved in any talks about a possible next season for Robot Chicken, or is that just something that you get kind of brought in on if you're available, if you're not focused strictly on the comics and whatnot? Is that just something where you're kind of writer for hire kind of thing?
Yeah, I think Matt will let me know whenever they're doing a session, and it hasn't really worked out since. And the last time he reached out, I was having fun doing comics, and I was busy, but I think they're in the middle of shooting right now. They've kept shooting. They shut down for a little bit, but they've been up and running for a couple of months now. So I don't know when the next season will start writing, but
okay.
No, I keep in touch with Matt and all them, but I haven't worked on Robot in a long time.
Yeah. Is Hellions I don't know how comic book writing works. Is that something you focus on exclusively? Like one book per month, you're pretty good because it's difficult for you to get the stories going, or are you involved in more than one? Like, does Marvel have you, pitch ideas for other series? Like, so it's a lot of continuity and things like that.
Yeah, you can usually work on more books than one. And so when I came back to comics this time, I started writing. I did like a Spider-Ham miniseries, and then I did an Ant-Man miniseries, and then I started Hellions. But then the pandemic happened, and it's just for a while there they weren't. I didn't even know if the last 2 issues of my Ant-Man comic were even going to come out. They just didn't know what the market was going to look like. I think everyone did not have high hopes for the comic book market. But all the retailers seemed to hunker down and really figure out how to make it work. They all started doing curbside and mail-in, and the sales really didn't take that much of a hit. So everything's coming back to life on the backs of these retailers who really did a great job running this business. So hopefully I'll have something else coming down the pike soon. But it's been kind of fun to focus on Hellions because I've been having a really fun time writing it.
Yeah, I mean, I was totally unfamiliar with it. I mean, I knew the characters, so when I read up more on it, I was like, that seems like a really cool concept. Get them on this. It was an island nation established by Xavier or something, right? And they forgive your past misdeeds or something like that. Is that correct? Do I have the basic synopsis? Okay. Yeah.
All the mutants have to stick together, so they have this council, and Mr. Sinister's on the council, and so Jonathan Hickman is the writer who kind of created that concept, and his miniseries that he did is it's kind of created a platform for interesting stories. So I don't think he ever wanted it to, it's not like, well, how does that work? That sounds like it'd be a mess. And I think he wanted these complicated ideas. He didn't want it to be a utopia. He wanted it to be complex and kind of morally fraught. And so what do you do with these characters who have murdered and been done evil things in the past, and now you have to kind of figure out how to keep them busy. And so Hellions is sort of about the untouchables of the island nation and what they can do to sort of try to rehabilitate them while keeping them out of everyone's way so they don't murder anyone.
That's why I do this podcast.
Yeah.
Keeps me from murdering people.
Keep you busy.
Yeah. Keep my hands busy.
Yeah. This doesn't even go out. This is just to keep
you it's just for therapy. That's it. Yeah.
Don't let Vinnie in on the secret. Do you have a particular character in Hellions that is easier for you or more fun for you to write, just their dialogue or the way they talk or what they can do?
Yeah, I like Grey Crow a lot because he's just sort of a badass. He's kind of like that Clint Eastwood type character, a Wolverine. He's fun. And then we have Nanny and Orphan Maker, and they're fun to write just because they're so weird. They've got she's an old woman in an egg costume, in egg armor to keep her safe, and she's got this creepy kid that she stole from his parents a long time ago, and he wears this big battle suit. And so they've got a super creepy, dysfunctional relationship, and that seems to roll off the tongue pretty easily. Sorry, Mom. Not super hard to write.
Personal experience. So Jeremy, I know you had some questions. He's got how old is Jeff now? 17?
17.
He's got a 17-year-old who really loves some of your stuff from Robot Chicken, and so he gave Jeremy here a few questions.
Oh, love it.
He wanted to know if you admit George Lucas, which you've already answered since you got beat up by him. So just like kind of what that experience was like for you, because for him, both my kids are huge Star Wars nerds. Like we pulled into Mike's house at Christmas, and he had a Star Wars inflatable in his front yard. I'm like, oh, it's an AT-AT, and no, it's not. It's an ATT-1. I'm like, all right, I'm out. So they're much more into it than I am. So
that's awesome.
That would be the ultimate for them, was to meet him. So
yeah,
it was just, they were curious.
It was really, really, really cool. It was really special. We would go up to Skywalker Ranch for like a couple weeks at a time, and then like work in the same writer's room where they cracked Indiana Jones, the first Indiana Jones movie, and where he wrote a lot of his office where he wrote the movies were right upstairs. And it was also at a weird time where we didn't know that he was selling Star Wars to Disney. And so from what he was saying, we thought we were working on the only Star Wars property that was going to come out. Like, we thought this was going to be it. And we were in a writer's room with George Lucas. So a lot of it was just asking him questions and trying to get him talking, because once he started talking, it was just fantastic. And yeah, as a Star Wars fan myself, it was like going on a fantasy camp that you really, like, how much could you charge for that? To go to Skywalker Ranch for 2 weeks.
Incredible. And
spend 8 hours a day with George Lucas. Like, well, you could charge what, $100,000, $200,000 for that?
Easy.
Yeah. So it was awesome.
Their other question was, what was your favorite sketch while working on Robot Chicken? What did you enjoy doing the most?
I think my favorite sketch was one called Fumbles, which was a G.I. Joe character who showed up to work on his first day, and he was very excited to get his code name, because everyone had a badass code name. But then he like opens a beer and fumbles it and falls on his ass, so everyone calls him Fumbles, which leads to him going crazy and melting down and eventually joining Cobra. But unfortunately for the Joes, he's a crack sniper. So now Cobra has a brilliant sniper. So the next time the Joes are out They're all just getting picked off. It just keeps getting more and more absurd. And this is probably one of my favorite ones that I worked on.
I'm pulling up that episode as soon as this is done. I swear.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
That's awesome.
There's one I think the only Robot Chicken sketch I didn't get, and I don't know why I didn't get it. Maybe you can help me understand.
Okay, I'll try. Yeah,
because it's a favorite for people I know. Because when you go to conventions, they go wild over it. Bitch pudding. I don't understand. I get a strawberry shortcake reference, but I don't understand it. Nothing against, it's Katie Sackhoff, right? Nothing against her. Yeah. She does great. I just don't understand.
Yes, it is hard because I think they were doing a strawberry shortcake sketch, and I think that they just had a bunch of, off-color names for other puppets. But then, and I think the other ones were clever, like they were actual desserts that you could say, oh, what would that character be like? What would that character be like? And then I think Tom Root wrote it, and he just threw a Hail Mary at the end and said, well, what if one was just called bitch pudding? And, bitch pudding does not exist. It's not a real dessert. And then he just had her say the most terrible things he could possibly think of. And then she just kept coming back until we did an entire episode of Robot Chicken that was just a bitch pudding special.
The bitch pudding special.
Yeah, but excellent. That character, people love her.
Yes.
Yeah.
People absolutely love her. Yeah, at every convention, people go crazy for her. Yep. It's wild.
That's the only one I think, like, I just can't wrap my mind about it, but everyone loves her. And so like I watched and I'm like, what is it I'm missing? I feel like I'm being left out of the loop. You know what I mean? Yeah. I love everything else. And so like, it just drives me crazy.
But it's so simple. It's brilliant, really.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so simple. Yeah.
But I could see if you watched like the fourth bitch pudding sketch, you'd be like, where did she come from? What is happening? Right. Who is this character?
Bitch pudding, the origins.
Yeah.
We have a fourth guy that can't be with us because he's out in the Bering Sea doing some what's he fish? He did
commercial fishing,
right?
Yeah.
Commercial
fishing. Awesome.
Yeah. So he wanted to send some video in, but he wasn't able to. So he just sent a question or two, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, but his question was, how hard is it to work with stop motion in the time of CG and traditional animation? I mean, obviously it's more of a niche thing. I mean, you guys took it and ran with it,
Yeah, I think that's one of the first things people say if they come tour the studio, which if you guys are ever in LA, you should absolutely let me know and I'll set it up so you guys can go take a look. But the first thing you notice is how hard everyone's working and how complicated everything is. It takes an awful lot of work from a lot of people to do that. And there's not a stop motion store anywhere that you can go to. This is all like hidden knowledge that's passed on from the stop motion community, and it's all little tricks that they've picked up. And that was so much fun working on Robot Chicken, because I just showed up as a little wise ass who wanted to make my dumb little jokes, and just in the process of sticking around and then being able to direct a couple seasons of Robot Chicken and then do Supermansion, to get to see how the artists do all of this stuff. It really is magical. And I guess it's cool because it's hard, but it's also irreplaceable because I don't think anything looks like stop motion or anything gives you the feeling that stop motion does. I, grew up playing with G.I. Joes, and I never got used to, when we were doing a G.I. Joe sketch, directing the animator, leaving for 3 hours and then coming back, and those Joes looked like they were moving around, Yeah. It just tricks your brain into thinking something magical is happening. It's awesome.
It really is an art, though. I mean, those.
Yeah.
And they got the patience of saints, because
yeah,
two frames I'd be done. I'd be like, that's it, I'm out.
Yeah. And that's a big thing with, my animation director, Alex Kamer, was, dyed in the wool stop motion guy. He knew everything. And so when I was directing, like, I would go in there and tell him what I wanted, and then he would have to tell me what I'm going to get, like,
right. Sure.
okay,
Sure.
what you just described, and he would always break it down. What you just described is very hard. Do you need to have it? And, sometimes you do need it, but
Right.
it's always trying to figure out how to make it to simplify it as much as possible, so the animator has more time to just sort of breathe and relax into it and have fun and do their thing.
And everything's done in-house, right? Like at the Stupid Buddies Studios. Is that what it is? Or
yeah, the sound mix is done off-site, and that's it. Everything else is done in that studio. So again, if you ever get a chance to poke around, it really is interesting to see how it's all done.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. That's movies like King Kong with Fay Ray back in the 30s.
Yeah,
using that that stuff, and it just amazing.
And those psychopaths couldn't see what they were doing. Like they were
exactly.
They were taking
hope it turns out okay.
Yeah, they had no idea what they're doing.
Right.
It's crazy. Like today they're watching their animation as they go. They can back it up, and then if you make a mistake, you can back it up a little bit.
Yeah. See, because there was a time I didn't know how they did that when I was a younger person. King Kong. That they moved it frame by frame by frame by frame to do that. And when I found that out, and I watched some of those scenes, of him fighting dinosaurs and stuff, it just blew me away. That's how it was done. Yeah. So my hat off to people who do that. It's definitely an art for sure.
Totally. And and like you said, it's a niche art. And so everyone that's in it, no one showed up and just kind of fell into being a stop motion animator. All of them love the art form, grew up doing it in their basements and their garages. And so you're just working around a lot of super dedicated artists, which is always fun.
Sure.
Doing Supermansion, like my job was like just a lot of the time you just show up and artists would show you cool shit that they made.
Yeah.
From your script, it was like it never got old. It was fantastic.
Yeah, bringing something that came out of your head to life like that. Yeah. It's got to be a pretty surreal moment when you actually see it for the first time.
Yeah, it's super special for sure.
Yeah.
And that kind of speaks to, your work on comics and, with stop motion and everything you've done. How important is it to, trust your artist? Like, who's the artist on Hellions right now?
Steven Segovia.
Okay.
Who
so,
is in the Philippines. Yeah, he's incredible.
You probably obviously saw some of his work, knew his work prior to getting involved. I take it there's a huge trust there because he's taking what you're writing to make it into the book it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I write my comic book script, but it's just a script, it is what it is, but it doesn't become a comic till that art comes back. And then I will rewrite to the artwork because I want to let the artwork have a say. I want it to kind of tell me what dialogue is still necessary, what isn't necessary anymore, or it can suggest a different line or different joke. Because I always want it when it does come out to be, everyone's book, the colorist, the artist, and the letterer. Everybody's kind of working together, and that's where you get the magic.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm kind of all over the board, by the way, Zeb. So I have on my list of questions. I kind of hit on one thing. I'll go from comics to Robot Chicken to Supermansion. So just so you know,
a little late for that disclaimer.
Yeah, I know. If you
really?
I hadn't noticed.
No, listen. I just want to explain because I feel like my ADHD is totally like boom, 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 all over the place. When you started writing, like you said, you just wanted to make smart, funny things on Robot Chicken. Like, were you just hanging out and then like one day they're like, hey man, you want to voice this character? Or is that something that comes up in the writer's room, or how's that work?
Yeah, I think it's when there were just a few sketches where they were, at the end of the day, everyone's written sketches, they collated into a packet, everyone reads the packet, then you go around and the two head writers and Matt and Seth vote to see if your sketch is going in. And it needs 3 out of 4 votes to get in. This is the most maddening part of the job because even a sketch that you wrote, you just threw it off, to try to get pages before the end of the day. For some reason, once people start voting on it, it becomes the most important thing in the world to get into the show,
I can imagine.
Because you want to do a good job as well. And Matt's there keeping track of how many sketches each person got in, so wait a minute, I lost my train of thought. What did you ask?
I was asking about the voice acting. Like how did that come about?
Yeah.
No, it's fine. You're getting there organically.
So when they read a sketch and you get 4 no's and you think it's hilarious, like you really think it's funny, sometimes you start acting it out. You're like, no, it's like this. What? And there were just a few times where I did that, where my voice performance kind of got the sketch into the show, because they're like, okay, well, if it's like that. And then eventually they let me come in to actually do the voice. And, to do that, you have to join SAG, which was like $1,000 at the time. Yeah. And which wasn't cheap, and
no.
you kind of had to gamble on yourself that this will be worth it, eventually.
Sure.
And then so I started going in and doing voices, and then you start realizing sometimes what you think you're doing isn't what you're actually doing when you hear it back. So
right.
Those earlier voices on Titan Maximum and Robot Chicken, they make me cringe so hard because I just think they're so weird. Voice actors, it's its own thing. You can have like a really talented actor come in, and sometimes the voice is just really limp and it doesn't do anything for the show, because voice actors are really, the actor is their voice, and they embody a lot, and it comes through.
Right.
And the voice really takes up space, it's really, really there. So I was very lucky to sort of get to learn how to do it on the job.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me to, I think, my only serious question, but I wanted to get your take on it. And it is kind of serious because of, the industry nowadays and all that kind of stuff. Obviously Big Mouth, they replaced Jenny Slate, I believe, because she was voicing the black character, Missy, I think. And they did that on Simpsons, with Apu and Dr. Hibbert, I think now. So like, where do you fall on that? I mean, because I feel like my thing's always been voice acting is voice acting. At the same time, you have to account for inclusion, because you like to hope that people are being included, but there may be some people who are not, and that I can see how that would suck. But at the same time, voice acting, as you just said, it's a persona. That's what it is. It's the acting with the voice. And so I don't know how you feel about that. Not a negative way per se, but
yeah. I definitely think it's important, and I think it is something people need to think about, because if you don't think about it, if you just say, well, let's just see how it shakes out, then like sort of historical factors come into play, and it's just kind of weighted against inclusion. So I do think you have to kind of grab the reins and pull it back. And I think that was, at the beginning of the pandemic with all the protests, I think that was something that was an eye opener for me, that it's not always enough to say, well, I'm not going to do any harm. I'm not going to be racist out in the world. I'm going to be nice to everyone. Sometimes in order to actually change things, to move where things are going, you have to not only not do harm, you have to try to make things better. You have to get out there.
Involved.
So
right.
You have to get involved and make moves. And I'm in comic books, and these comic books that I've read for years are now being made into movies. And if you don't make some plays, all of the characters are going to be white, because that's all that there was room for back then, or all that was made room for.
Right.
And so, that's why if you look at something like the Fantastic Four, should they be a white family? Probably not, because if you're going to be beholden to everything that came in the past, everything will just continue going the way it was. So I think it is something that you got to decide what side of it you're on, and then try to do good,
Yeah. That's the best you can do.
Yeah.
But getting involved, like you said, that's the key. I mean,
Yeah. trying to make things better.
Instead of sitting back and saying, well, that's too bad, kind of step in and say, well, let's try this. So
yeah.
Were you a fan of, not necessarily the movie itself, I think it was Josh Trank, but were you a fan of Michael B. Jordan being cast as Johnny Storm in the latest Fantastic Four?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, and Michael B. Jordan's awesome, so that was great.
Oh, yeah.
Great
Absolutely.
casting. And I think that Fantastic Four, the most important part of that is that they're a family. I think that's more important than them being a particular race. And I think you can do the family, and I think it becomes more interesting if it's an African American family or if it's a Latino family. It gives it a different flavor, and yeah, I just think it's worth considering for every one of these things, especially when you're dealing with properties that are literally from a different time or were created in a different time.
All right. What would you think you could say to people who get so up in arms about it? I mean, the fanboy community, I know when that movie came out, before they even saw the movie, they're like, a black Johnny Storm, how are you going to do that? I love Michael B. Jordan. I've loved him since, I think, Fruitvale Station or The Wire. I watched him on The Wire, so I mean, I had no problem with it, but at the same time, you get the diehards who are like, no, this is how it is. This is how it's going to be. But you've already spoken to that. You got to make room for the inclusion. And that's where you change up. The family has different definitions to different people. In that movie, family was, I forget if she was adopted or whatnot, Sue Storm, Kate Mara. I forget. It's been a while since I saw that movie. But I mean, it's obviously important, like you said, because you got to speak to the diversity in the world today. And not just, you got to make people feel included. We keep talking about inclusion.
Yeah. And it might make people or even yourself feel uncomfortable. But, the older I get, I start realizing that when I get uncomfortable, it usually means I have something to learn, or I can ask myself why I'm uncomfortable.
Right.
Or, you start learning to question yourself and not just having the knee-jerk reaction every time. And, you got to weigh if it annoys you a little bit to have a black Johnny Storm against the fact that we're in a society and we're all trying to get along and we're all trying to give everybody a fair shake. What's more important?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right.
What's it like being married to Cooch?
It's a dream.
The dream come true.
What a dream. Yeah. Yeah, I might have given her first acting job. Maybe. That's probably not accurate because she's always been a hustler. But yeah, that was super fun. That was a voice and a character that she would always do in the car when we were on a road trip or something. She'd just break into that voice. And so when I was doing the show, that character started as the bureaucrat. And she was like a really prim and proper cat character. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. What if we could do that voice Heidi does? That would be spectacular. And yeah, I think that was one of the first voices we cast because I played it for the bigwigs at Adult Swim and they loved it. So that was really fun.
That's awesome.
All right. And what does directing entail for like stop motion? Like, you obviously have the writers who write the script and you're involved, I'm sure, as the creator with all that. You see the script, you talk to your animators, you walk them through it. Like you said, they come back to you, tell them what they can do and what's realistic. What is it? It's just kind of like a final say, you kind of have a hand in everything kind of thing, being the director? Or?
Yeah, the big thumbprints you get are in directing the voices, and then a lot of your directing actually happens with the storyboard artists, and then when you're in the edit for the animatic, because you're locking in timing at that point. Once the timing's locked in, they go and do the voice assignments. They figure out what syllable is being used on which frame, and so you're sort of locking in the overall timing. And then when you get to the stage and talk to the animator, they're pretty much the actors and they only get one take and they're doing it in super slow motion. So I always try to just pick one or two things that I that are really important to come across in the shot. And I like to, you want to keep it to one or two things because, like I said before, you just want to give them as much wide open freedom as possible. They're the ones that are going to be in that booth for 3 to 6 hours working on one shot. I want them to be able to be as creative as possible while getting what is needed for the shot. So you say, hey, they need to hit this and this, but how you actually do the performance, that's up to you. And it kind of has to be up to them because once you get kind of down the road, the puppet or the scene starts kind of telling you what you're going to do. And so they have to have a little bit of leeway.
All right. What if you had to pick one? You can only do one for the rest of your life. And we'll stick with the television realm because obviously you love comics. Writing, acting, or directing?
You know, I've always wanted to be a director. That's what I still want to do more of that. But at the end of the day, I feel like if I was a director, I'd still be wanting to rewrite things. Or I think that at my heart, I'm probably a writer, and I think I would probably go crazy if I wasn't writing something.
Okay. And I saw you directed, what was that short film you directed a few years ago? Shifty? No, something. What was it called?
Oh, that was a fun. I didn't technically direct that. I was the directing coach.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We were doing it. We were doing it for a girls' home. They would have a day where it was called the Aviva House, where at-risk youth are living there. And so we would go in there, and you'd go in there the first day and you'd help the girls write their script. And then you would come back and you try to get as many friends from the industry as you can. And at the actual home, you would shoot the movie with them. One of them would be the director. One of them would run sound. And I think one of them was following the camera around. And then they would swap 3 times during the day. Okay. So they would get a chance to do it. So Shifty was not my brainchild, but very proud of it.
I was looking all over for it because I'm like, I know a lot of Zeb's work, but I want to see stuff I haven't seen. So for instance, I couldn't find that anywhere, but I did today. I just watched Tell Him Back. How did you get involved with that? Obviously, you're one of 3 writers. I think one of them was the director or something like that. But
yeah, so that was, I think I was the first writer, and that was at Shadow Machine, which was the first production house before the Robot Chicken guys went to Stupid Buddy.
Okay.
So it was just in between seasons in 2010 or 2011, I think. Okay. And it was interesting because I went in there and they had already started building the puppets. And so there was like certain things that were locked in. And it was kind of an interesting thing where you're just trying to bring the stuff that was already built together. Like, well, it has to have that. We spent $50,000 on that.
We're definitely using that.
Yeah, that's in the movie. So figure out where that is in the movie, but do it now. But then, I left and Hugh Sterbikoff did a pass. And then the director, I think he got a writing credit because I think they were doing a lot of improv in the booth. Okay. I haven't seen that in a while. But Ross Schumann, who directed it, is a very talented stop motion director who's a badass.
All right. You have any I know we talked about this a little bit. You love Marvel. You're staying with Marvel right now. Do you have any plans or any thoughts or any desires to ever do a creator-owned comic or your own idea in your head that you have a burning desire to get onto the page?
Yeah, in the last couple of years I've started chipping away at that. And that's something that I was wondering why I never had the desire to do that. And I felt like I think it's because it's kind of scary to just kind of untether yourself from anything. So I just started kind of gently forcing myself to do that, and have ended up enjoying it. So I'm looking for artists now, and it is really fun and really validating. I see why people do it.
All right, cool. All right. Well, Zeb, I think we've kept you long enough. We got an hour of your time.
Absolutely.
I could not be more thankful that you reached back out to a random cold caller on Twitter
Absolutely.
and to have you on. You're tech. I tell the guys you've got to be our biggest guest to date. That's saying, listen, that's saying something. We had George Hardy from Troll 2. You ever seen Troll 2?
I have seen Troll 2. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yes.
Troll 2 is great.
Yeah.
He was pretty awesome. He invited us to his place in Alabama. We got to go take him up on that.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Exactly.
So obviously you're working on Hellions now. Is there anything else you wanted to, get out there, let people know about besides Hellions, your work there right now?
I'm percolating some stuff at Marvel right now, but I don't think I'm allowed to talk about it. But cool. Keep an eye out. I really appreciate anyone that supports that industry. It's my first love. I love it a lot. So check it out, or just go read someone else's comics. I'll take it all.
And I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, have you been approached or had any thoughts of trying to get involved in the Marvel Cinematic Universe at all?
Well, I actually last year, I straddled the pandemic, but I was working on the She-Hulk Disney Plus show.
Oh, cool.
One Jessica Gao, who was working with me on the Star Wars show Detours, it was the head writer. And so when I found that out, I was like, could you get me on that show, please? And she spent all of her chits on getting me on that show. So I owe her a lot. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, awesome. I'm really excited for it.
All right, cool. Well, there you go. Cool. That's another thing. That's upcoming. I think that's coming up this year.
Oh yeah, that is coming. I should have.
Where's my residuals now?
Yeah. That's going to need a lot of help when it comes out. We need to get some eyeballs on that.
No, man. Listen, I think with what WandaVision did and Falcon and Winter Soldier, it's going to be by itself. It won't have any problem. I think Mark Ruffalo's even involved. I mean, I don't know what you can talk about, but I think he's been spoken of being in the show in some capacity. So
I think he is too. That's what I'll say. I think he is.
That's enough. Quiet down.
All right, Zeb. Well, for Jeremy and me and Vinny and Saint, who's not here, I want to thank you again for coming on our little podcast. And anytime you want to stop by and chat, even for a little time or anything, let me know. You have free reign to come on anytime, man.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Really appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Zeb. It's good
really
talking to you,
chatting
man.
with you. Yep.
Take care.
Thanks, Zeb. All right. Well, you've been listening to The Usual Saints.